I look at it this way. So uh, you can't aspire to be the chef that has the best ingredients. You have to aspire to be the best chef, and that's using the ingredients you have. You got to start there. Take what you got and just practice, 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 practice. And if you feel like it's a hobby you still enjoy and want to move forward with, go ahead and spend that money.
Hey everyone, welcome to another Entering Into Space podcast. I'm your host, Stevie Miller, and tonight we are interviewing Wade Hustad. I said his name right. And even though Wade resides in Minnesota, all his astro gear is down in the dark skies of New Mexico. So tonight we're going to learn about how he acquires all his data from New Mexico and what his remote astro rig is like. As a reminder, if you want to download the podcast version of this interview, you can check me out on all the major podcast platforms. Oh, and make sure you watch to the end of this video to see some of Wade's amazing images. So tonight, Astro Freaks, I give you Wade Hustad. Wade Hustad, did I say your name right? Hustad? Hustad.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for correcting me, because I've been telling everybody, I've got Wade Hustad coming on. Yay!
Well, we're going to be talking about color hues. So if you ever have to remember
Hustad.
Hues, yeah.
Hustad. Well, I appreciate you correcting me. It was good to see you, and appreciate you coming on, man, for sure.
Hey, man, I appreciate it. It's great to touch base again. It's been a while since we chatted, but it's always good to hear from you.
Yeah, man. So you gave me a lot of accolades on our first two podcast, so you kind of know the gist. We're here to figure out how you went from Hustad, Simple Wade, doing your thing, to holy crap, let me spend a whole bunch of money on this freaking hobby that I have known nothing about, but I'm going to pour everything I have into it. You know, what's that? Was that a day, a week, a month? Walk me through that origin story.
In all honesty, it starts from back when I was a kid. So if I have to paint kind of a big picture here, as a kid, I had a small refractor that my parents got for me as a gift. I think it was for Christmas. But even before then, I was a rambunctious kid, had lots of energy. And in first grade, you had to go to the library and they'd make you pick out a book that you take home. I didn't want to read books. I wanted to go play. I wanted to, be in Fayette and play tag and stuff like that. But down one of the aisles, there was a book that had Saturn on it. And as a kid, you're like, well, what's that? Like, you haven't been exposed to this stuff. This was the early 1990s. And I picked up that book. And ever since then, I've been just glued to space and I'm just awed by it. So got a small telescope, got to look at stuff. It's pretty underwhelming what you see through a telescope in, even decent skies. But in college, one of my mechanical engineering friends, his uncle, has his own business, and he built himself an observatory. It's like 10-inch or a 10-foot dome down at his property. And my buddy invited me down there, and this was like 2010. And it was pretty wild for me to see something that was built, by hand. And he had it was an older William Optics telescope, Takahashi EM200, which is a pretty fancy mount back then. Yeah. And I think he had like a Celestron C10, but this was in 2010, and we went down there, and I was just kind of blown away by what he had, but didn't really understand it at that point in time. You can't image anything. Well, several months later, he sent me some photos, and I was like, this is wild, M101, all the messier galaxies you can imagine. I'm like, you're getting this from your backyard? So at that point in time, I was still doing my college thing, graduating, getting a job. Didn't really think too much of it. But in 2019, I stayed in touch with my friend. We're pretty good friends still to this day. But we went back down there in 2019 in September, and we actually started. He was showing me how to image through his scope and a CCD camera. And at that point in time, I'd seen Trevor Jones on YouTube and started to spark your curiosity. That's a household name. Everybody knows that in astrophotography. But less than 30 days later, after being at his place, I bought myself a telescope and a mount.
Oh, wow.
And that is where I dove in head first, and it became a good nightmare to have. It's been part of my life ever since.
What did you get?
So I ended up getting, it was two things. I got a small Iopton Sky Guider and a William Optics 61 millimeter Zenith Star, I think is what they're
Yeah.
called.
Yeah.
And I had that first, and my college friend's uncle, he was like, "Oh, you're not going to like that thing. You're not going to like it." But I'm like, well, starting off, right? So I didn't know any better. I didn't even know how to guide at that point in time. So I had that for a couple months. I still kept that, but I ended up getting a EQ6R and an Explorer Scientific 127 on it with the DSLR still. So
Wow, very nice.
you know, as the story unfolds, you know how it goes. You acquire so much gear, and you look back, and you're like, I probably should sell this. This is not cutting it anymore. So
yeah. So you started out with a DSLR?
I did, yeah.
So one you already had laying around that you were using for other stuff, or did you go buy it specifically for astrophotography?
It was one a friend was looking to sell, and I ended up getting a pretty good price on it, and it taught you a lot. But as you get going and you realize every night you image, you need your calibration files, your lights, your darks, your biases. I got so sick and tired of trying to match temperatures with the DSLR.
Yeah.
So that's when I went to Cloudy Nights and found ASI 1600 MM4 that was used. So that kind of changed the game for me.
Yeah.
So
but
that was a good plunge.
Yeah. So did you astro modify the DSLR, or did you just always shoot it stock?
I shot it stock, and then, you know, all this stuff they talk about online. Oh, you have to get it astro modified. So I spent more money to get another DSLR. It only lasted for a few months.
Yeah.
But, you know how the market goes. I sold it and pretty much broke even minus shipping. So it was pretty good. But I was pleased with the results at that point in time. I really had no baseline to judge myself off of except for astro in at that point in time, which everything to me looked like freaking icing on the cake. It was all the images people were posting even 3-4 years ago were pretty good in my opinion.
So what was your first image that you took that was like your first like successful with calibration frames and the first like project? What was your first project image?
Man, I would have to say it was probably the Triangulum Galaxy M33.
Oh yeah,
and
cool.
That was just it wasn't narrowband, no narrowband in it from a DSLR, just used broadband. But at that point in time, I didn't even know how to image. So I'm trying to star line my scope. I have a 90-degree mirror and an eyepiece trying to get, you know, Sirius and all these other stars into picture. And it's 30 degrees outside. I'm freezing my butt off. And, you know, you learn as you go. There's no plate solving then either. So as you find the Triangulum, which isn't as bright as Andromeda, you're like trying to get it centered and you're looking, and then you take a picture, or you wait for it to download off the DSLR and it's not centered. Okay, bump it by, you know, a few milliseconds to get it centered. So it was a lot of screwing around to get it set up. But, you know, once you actually sit down, I didn't know what to process. I don't know Photoshop, and I wanted to get into PixInsight because that seemed like the cat's meow. So I sat down with, it was at Larry's Astro Shed Photos, kind of like the introductory guy that kind of walked you through on how to process in PixInsight. And I think I spent a whole day just processing that. And I was like, wow, this is fun, but also challenging. So I was pretty pleased with that.
So if somebody came to you and were like, hey man, if somebody was you know, back in 2018, 19, getting into it, would you say just skip the DSLR, skip all this, go straight to here, spend all this money? Or would you recommend them going through the star alignment and trying to find stuff through a spotting scope and using a DSLR? Would you want them to go through those same struggles? Do you think that made you the astrophotographer that you are today?
I think it did, because you actually have to troubleshoot a lot. I mean, this isn't just putting a camera on a telescope and throwing it on a mount and aiming at something. There's a lot of software that goes along with it, and they all have to talk to each other. So if I had to recommend anything to anybody, I'd ask a few basic questions. What do you currently have? What is your budget if you do actually want to spend something? But
no, you never asked that question. Come on, man.
Well, I look at it this way. So you can't aspire to be the chef that has the best ingredients. You
Yeah.
have to aspire to be the best chef, and that's using the ingredients you have. So if you have
Yeah.
that DSLR in your back pocket and you can buy a mount, that's where I'm going to tell you, don't get an Ioptron Sky Guider.
Yeah.
You need to get, a used mount that has go-to functionality and the guiding abilities to use your RA and deck corrections. That's really what you need. But a DSLR is a good spot to start.
Yeah.
But I can tell you, there's been a lot of good data out there, and there's people that don't know how to process. So you got to start there. Take what you
Yeah.
got and just practice, practice,
Yeah.
practice, practice. And if you feel like it's a hobby you still enjoy and want to move forward with, go ahead and spend that money.
See, I'm
Blow
more
the budget, baby.
I'm more sadistic. I tell them don't start with any kind of get on your knees, break your back, do star
Yeah.
alignment, just discourage and pack it all up and bring it inside and try it again the next night so you get it. Damn it, that's kind of how I.
And that's why there's a lot of used shit for sale on cloudy nights. People are getting upset with their stuff they have.
Yeah.
But I don't blame you. You got to get down and dirty and really get to understand what you got first. And then you can peruse the internet, and there's all sorts of recommendations, good or bad, that kind of lead you down a path of upgrading. So if you don't have a DSLR, do not buy a DSLR.
Yeah.
Get a dedicated
Yeah.
Astrocam.
Okay.
Is
So
what
just
I
go
would
straight
say.
to the Astrocam.
Yeah, if you're really going to
Yeah.
do it, skip the DSLR part. If you're going to do Milky Way shots and extreme wide field and, Aurora, all that stuff, you can definitely use a DSLR. But if you're going
Yeah.
after deep sky, obviously you want to have dedicated Astrocam. Makes doing the calibration files a lot easier. Everybody knows that's really tedious. So if you get your temperatures right, your gain right, your offset right, it makes it a lot easier.
Yeah.
And just pick your poison. You can do mono, which is going to be 4 times the work, or you can do color, which is a little bit simplified. So,
Yeah.
but get a good mount.
Oh yeah. Spend your money on your mount, people.
Yeah.
Listen to the man.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's where you pour your money. You can get by with an okay scope and you can get by with an okay camera, but you cannot get by with an okay mount. You will struggle. And if you're listening out there and you have a Celestron AVX, I see those people all the time, and that price is super attractive, like $800, but all you do is you're just scrolling, and it's just nothing but problems and troubles, and I come from that early on, and I'm talking '90s, late '90s, where Mead and Celestron were like the only two brands, and they were selling.
Sure.
They were selling knockoff. So it would say Mead, it would say Polaris by Mead, and plastic lenses and just garbage. And it was so discouraging to me to fight through that stuff. And I think it turns a lot of people away from a wonderful lifetime hobby, when they're buying garbage like that they put out there.
So that stuff they're selling, were you actually imaging with those telescopes?
I believe it or not, the first thing I ever did was I put a VCR, not a VCR, Jesus, a camcorder, and I'm talking on a reflector, and I hooked it up to a big TV that I drug out of my house and looked at the moon. And I had the adapter was made of a PVC coupling for PVC pipe.
Sure.
Yeah. And then I did take pictures with my first real scope was a LX50 Mead 10-inch. Had no idea what I was buying. Didn't know anything about 2,000 millimeters of focal length or f10, like this. And I was like, heck yeah, because I had the money, and I took some pictures through it, and it would take a week to find out if they were in focus or not. So
yeah, I've heard a lot of horror stories about film. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that uncle I spoke to, he started off with film too. I think it was an LX50, just like you did.
Yeah.
And he definitely did film, but when they came out with cameras, the size of the chips were like, I don't know, 50 pixels by 200 pixels or something, like extremely small.
Yeah.
And guiding was non-existent back then. So I can't imagine your stresses of sitting there sweating, trying to keep that star, right in the crosshairs.
I don't even think I knew enough to do that. I just turned it on. I don't even know if I was polar aligned. I don't know, man. It just worked somehow or another. But yeah, I did a lot of observing back then. So do you, like, if people are talking to you and you're like maybe educating people, do you feel somewhat conflicted steering people down the observing path do you think it's worth it to even do that anymore? I mean, I know a lot of people are old school and they love that, but if somebody's like, "Hey, I want to buy a telescope so I can look at all this stuff," do you say, "Yeah, great, go buy that," or do you just really say, because of the light pollution, you're just wasting your time?
If you're going to get a telescope, you're going to look at the planets. You're going to look
Yeah,
at the moon and Orion and Andromeda and see, a gray fuzzy. Um, I just tell people they're going to be underwhelmed if they just want to go after visual. But don't get me wrong, there's some good scopes out there, and if you get a good dark sky, I
yeah,
mean, globular clusters look beautiful through a good telescope. It's just I'm hesitant to recommending anything. Get that cheap telescope. Just go ahead and get the cheap telescope and see if you like it. If you do, then great. Go spend $2,000 on a used telescope.
yeah,
Go
yeah.
from the cheap to the expensive stuff.
Oh yeah, yeah. I do tell people to get a Dobsonian, a good ground base if they
Yeah.
just absolutely just want to look through something, but the
And
problem with that is that I almost feel like there's those people in the world right now that I wonder, did they actually make it to the place when they asked me for directions? Because I really didn't know where the directions, you know.
yeah.
Those people that you don't know if are just still aimlessly wandering around because I gave them
They're
shit
lost
directions.
still. They never
Yeah, that's
made
kind
it.
of how I feel about the people asking me about, should I
Yeah.
get a scope for observing? I'm like, yeah. Psh. And then, a week later, I'm like, oh man, what did I do?
Was
I
that was
can't
that
believe I
good or
did
bad? Yeah.
it.
Well, I mean, I look at it this way. I still have my 4-inch reflector from when I was a kid, like in my
Cool.
teens. And for like the kids, my fiance's oldest daughter is 9 years old.
Yeah.
And looking through the telescope, they get a feel for what they're looking at.
Yeah.
If they're
Yeah.
looking at an image on a screen, it's kind of a different story. So if they can be a part of it and see it with their own physical eyes through an eyepiece, I've
That's
seen that
true.
that actually is, you can connect a little bit more to your outside world by looking actually through a telescope. So
Yeah, that's a
you just
good
got to
point.
get them
I didn't think of
engaged.
that. Yeah,
Here's
for
Jupiter.
sure.
How many belts around Jupiter can you count?
How
Oh,
many
you only see
moons?
two? It's a
Yeah.
pretty shitty night for seeing.
Yeah. So when you were talking about how technical this hobby is, true, is there something very technical about it that you feel like you want to learn more about?
There's always a lot I want to learn more about.
Yeah.
So I definitely have learned a ton from the gentleman who has the dome down in southern Minnesota.
Mm,
He's an engineer.
okay.
He's one of the guys that has I always tell him he's got the mitochondrial DNA of a teenager and he's in his 50s. He's on volume 11 from the morning he wakes up to
Yeah.
10 o'clock at night.
Oh
But
wow.
he's a role model. He's really taught me a lot. I'd like to get a little bit more hands-on again. So getting into it, I used to image from the backyard. I did that for about a year, and I told my friend Dave. So Dave is my friend, that uncle, and I told him I was going to go down to New Mexico for a week and bring my astronomy gear down there and image at Rusty's RV spot in New Mexico for a week.
Yeah.
And he goes, well, damn, if you're going to go down there for a week, I don't want to go down there for a week. I want to
Yeah.
go down there for good. So I went on one of my trips in 2020 and I scouted out Astronomer's Paradise in New Mexico, and they have a couple rental sheds down there. And I went down there for a 2-week vacation with my dad. And I told him I went to that site. It was really awesome. I spent 2 nights on that site on a concrete pad, freeze my butt off, imaging with that stupid William Optics 61-inch and a IOPTON Sky Guider.
Yeah.
But I told him it was really good, and him and I just took the plunge. It was, not even a year later, we both purchased an RV, ripped out one couch, ripped out 3 beds, and put in desks in the RV. So we got
Wow.
workstations, hauled that thing down to New Mexico. The shed isn't set up for remote imaging. We were just going to go down there every 2 weeks and spend some time down there
Hmm.
and come back for a couple months, process our data, have fun with it, and drive back down and do it again.
Wow.
My job doesn't really allow for that. So after about a year of that, I realized we had to do something different. But the second trip down, he's like, I'm an engineer. We can totally, foolproof this place that we can use it from Minnesota.
Hmm.
So we started automating the roof control system using a $5 Arduino off of Amazon. he he wrote the code for it to get the shed to open up and close, and we got these limit switches that are on-off switches on both ends of the shed that hit little trigger points to say it's open to closed, and it sends back a control loop back to the Arduino. So we got the shed open, right? Now we're thinking, how do we get these scopes to work from
Yeah.
Minnesota?
Yeah.
And also put the covers on and get the covers
Yeah.
off. So they have that all-in-attack flip cover that they sell online for a couple $100, and Dave's like, "No, we're not going to buy that. We'll just make our own." So he ended up buying a
Yeah.
couple 3D printers, and we've drawn up a bunch of renderings to make these flat covers for the telescopes themselves. And oh my gosh, it goes down the list. So the flap covers that cover up the scopes also have illumination panels in them.
Oh,
And
of course.
we took these stepper motors and we made this 3D drawing of this little control box and made a coupler that connects a stepper motor to the brightness control for the illumination panel. And that stepper motor we can control with another $5 Arduino and
Wow.
change the brightness on it. And then we got a motor on the flip cover that flips it open and closed. And same thing, you got your step points that you set it to flip from 0 to 270. And we got that solved. And as we get going, there's other problems we had to solve. But we went from just imaging in our backyard and at his dome to within 2 trips down there, imaging fully remotely from New Mexico.
Oh my goodness.
So I completely forgot what question you originally asked me, but that's really
That's
where
all
my
right.
astronomy life has gone since
Yeah.
2020. So
Wow. So is it completely enclosed, like weatherproof now, or what's the setup look like?
yeah, it's pretty weatherproof. I mean, obviously it's not completely dust proof. So when they
Yeah.
have their monsoons down there during the summer or heavy rain, you don't get rain on your equipment, but you get dust buildup. You go down there and wipe your finger across the top. I mean, it looks like
Yeah.
you got a layer of dust on there. But the covers themselves seal pretty good. And every time we go down, we blow out the PCs that we have. Clean the cameras, clean our lenses if they need to, blow off the primary lenses, and go balls to the walls again.
Wow. So how are you guys planning your imaging runs? Does it know what to do already? Is it AI, or are you guys just programming
It's
that
not.
every night?
That's a great idea. Getting AI involved would be nice, but it's all manual right now. So
Okay.
we get anywhere between 200 to 300 clear nights down there a year,
Oh my
and that
goodness.
is way more than I ever could need because my time's so limited right now, anyways, with family and
Yeah.
work. But it's all manual at this point in time. So I'm kind of a stickler when it comes to that moon, how bright it is, when it's coming up,
Mm-hmm.
when it's going down. So I set my imaging sequences based upon that, and also the targets that we're shooting. So generally, we stay above 30 degrees.
Yeah.
And depending on where that moon's at, we'll shoot broadband when there is no moon, up to about 50% or the first quarter
Yeah.
or last quarter. And then
Yeah.
after that, we'll switch over to narrow band. And then, in all honesty, when you get between like 85% illumination of that moon all the way to the other end at 85%, it's really bright. I mean,
Yeah.
you could image the brighter stuff and probably be okay, but I sit there and I look down to the exact minute of when that moon's going to set and go 30 40 minutes past that to change over from narrowband to broadband. But same with astronomical dusk and dawn. You got to set that properly.
Yeah.
But using Sequence
Wow.
Generator Pro, all that stuff is super simple. And
Oh,
you're
so you're
using
still
Nina, aren't you?
No, I
No?
have gotten away from Nina. I am completely ASIR Pro. I have gone.
No,
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if that's
that's
the
right.
dark side or the bright side or the force or the resistance or the rebellion or what it is, but I've
You
moved on.
flashed your phone in Mark's
Yeah,
Mark's podcast. So like that's right, you are using ASI Air Pro.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Love it, love it. There's some things. Obviously, Nina has and Secrets Generator Pro have a ton of features, and they almost have more features than I would ever use in my repertoire. But I kind of
Yeah.
like the simplicity of the ASIR Pro because it just does these things, but it does them well, and it's all built under one. It's all under one roof, so that's why I like it.
Is it focused towards people that are imaging actually in their backyards based upon
Uh,
using Wi-Fi?
yeah. Although I have never used its Wi-Fi output. I've always used my home Wi-Fi, which is
Okay.
really nice.
Yeah.
And then my neighbor, I was talking to him, and he's a electrical geek, Wi-Fi junkie. So he actually ran a landline out to the rig, so I don't have to
Cool.
worry about it picking up Wi-Fi. It's hardwired in through an Ethernet cable, so that's nice, and it's all phone based, which is nice. and no more laptops and no more astrototes or any of that kind of stuff. But not knocking
Yeah.
any of that stuff. It's just been really nice. And somebody who follows me on YouTube, Jeremiah, he sent me an ASAR Pro as a gift, just like, hey man, you really helped me out. Here's a gift. I'm like,
Oh,
holy crap.
that's
Yeah.
fantastic.
So after getting that one and using it, I went out and bought the Plus for my new rig. So that's what I'm doing.
Seems nice. I mean, it's just one less thing that you have to bring out every night if you get your gear set up. So
yeah.
But you're tearing down and setting up every night. Are you polar aligning with, oh gosh, that Pole Master?
Nope.
Or do you actually sit and use drift alignment?
No, the ASAR Pro has its own built-in polar alignment. So
you guys are cheating like the rest of us.
Yeah. And it's nice. It's nice too, because I actually, with my new scope, it's such a wind sail. I built like a little 4-walled scrim unit around it to kind of block some wind.
To protect it.
Yeah. But when it rotates down 60 degrees after shooting the first plate solving, your first area in the north, it actually is below that wall. So, but this one's nice because you can rotate on the deck axis and point almost to the east and still polar align. So that's nice.
So you're able to still get the job done with your your enclosure.
Yep. Yeah. So
slick.
that makes it nice. Like because Sharp Cat Pro, which is what I used for years, which is what a lot of people use to polar align through their spotting scope. I never could do that. It had to be pointed at Polaris, or else it just didn't know what it was doing.
Didn't work, yeah.
So I guess that kind of segues into, so you're a sequence generator pro guy. You use that for capture. What was the first method? Were you out there with like an intervalometer with the DSLR pushing buttons?
Yeah.
How long did it take you to get kind of semi-automated?
I was using that interferometer. That thing sucked. I hated it. It was not fun. You're cold all the time. Even if you set it to run 60 images or whatever, you still got to check on it. You're walking out there constantly, and did it work? And those $20 units just don't work the best. But I tell you what, when I stepped up and spent the money at that point in time, they did not have subscriptions for SGP. You just bought the license and you were pretty much good to go for, I think, 3 computers. Once I got that and figured out how to set it up, it was there was a gentleman on YouTube that showed how to speak the EQ mod with SGP. It made it super simple. But that's when I got into TeamViewer, and I was like, I'm stepping up into the 21st century. Instead of freezing my butt off, I was sitting on the big screen in the house just watching TeamViewer and the PC and the telescopes. So I felt pretty cool until TeamViewer said I was using it for business purposes or whatever.
Right, it happened to me too.
It
happened to me too.
We're getting rid of this, so swapped over to AnyDesk.
What'd you go to? AnyDesk is a good one.
Yeah, we have AnyDesk, and then there's a VPN client we use too, and it's called Radmin. You have to spend like $50 on a license. So right now, just to have some redundancy with our Astro Shed, we have AnyDesk that we use as a secondary source, and then our Radmin VPN as our primary source, just as a secondary path of getting in case one of them just doesn't work and our shed's open and there's clouds or wind coming. So, but we got some securities built in down there. If the shed loses power or we lose internet, within 14 minutes, the shed will close just to protect our investment. So,
cool.
It's pretty slick, but stepping up in the world, that intervalometer is junk. You got to get SGP, Nina, you said, the ASAR Pro, and get the gear outside, get it set up, come inside, enjoy some time with the family, and then just kind of watch it on your tablet or your phone is the way to do it.
Yeah, for sure. How are you getting your data from the scope down in New Mexico?
It's a lovely scenario of dealing with very, very crappy internet speeds. When you're in the middle of New Mexico, there is not 100, 200 megabit speeds down there. So we're using it's a radio internet, and our speeds are like 10 to 15 megabytes, which is still pretty slow. But we have Dropbox that we use, so all our files get transferred. Again, my buddy Dave built a program that does our file transfers from each PC. So each telescope down there, there's 4 of them now, 2 and 3 which are operational. But the files will get transferred to one of the PCs that has the Dropbox directory on it, and they all just get uploaded to Dropbox. And for the longest time, I mean, we were manually transferring those from Dropbox to, our hard drives and then a backup
Mm-hmm.
hard drive. And then he goes, well, we're not going to do that anymore. He set it up so that they automatically go to our drives currently on his PC down in Mankato and mine here in Watertown. And once the program recognizes we both have the files, it'll
Yeah.
delete it from the Dropbox and delete it from the PC in New Mexico so it doesn't hog up space. So
Yeah.
it takes time. It doesn't,
That's
we don't,
nice. That's
it's
nice.
very, very nice because I used to spend, it was like a routine. Every morning
Yeah.
I'd wake up, close the scope, shut the shed, make sure data was transferred over to Dropbox, and then slowly monitor that throughout the day until it was gone and keep
Yeah.
backups. But everything's so automated now, I can actually be a normal human being, socialize, be with family, and come home and
You
it's
got a
all
ways to
done.
go, buddy, before you're normal. I'm sorry, I hate to tell you
Oh,
that.
yeah. We picked the wrong hobby to be normal. That's for sure.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so your fiance, she's pretty understanding to this obsession of yours.
She is. She's the kind of girl that, begs me to come to bed every night when she goes to bed. And
Yeah,
I don't blame her. That's a really important part. But before getting all this stuff automated, I got an image. I got to watch, PhD2. I got to make sure everything's good. I'll be in
yeah,
bed in 30 minutes. 2 hours later, I'm still up watching stuff. So
yeah,
she's pretty forgiving. I do have to give her
yeah.
that.
That's good.
Doing it now for 3 years, if she's not used to it by now, I don't know.
Yeah. No, she's been faking it for a while then, huh? No, she's
Yeah,
doing
yeah.
good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, mine is like, yeah, that's nice, honey. That's a nice guide graph. Oh, point 0.4. Yay.
Point
That's
four.
so nice. Point 0.4.
It's 0.7
Like
yesterday. Yeah. Any idea? No. But look at the images that we have. Look at the sub that just came off the camera.
oh, look at this sub exposure. Oh my god. And I gotta hand it because there was times when I would process something and you couldn't see it. You
Yeah.
couldn't see it. And I would go, look, it's the horse head. She's like, yeah, I see it.
Uh-huh.
And I'm like,
Yep.
and I didn't even see it, but she's been super supportive. You gotta have it,
Yeah.
and like if you're into this hobby and you're gonna start dating somebody, I mean, this is going in a totally different direction, but you gotta have that talk. You gotta be like, listen,
Yeah.
this I'm passionate about this. It takes a lot of my time. I'm gonna put a lot of time to you, but it takes a lot of my time,
It
and that's
does.
yeah, for sure.
Nobody's perfect. So like your relationship, your hobbies, your professional life, all that stuff can constantly be worked on.
Yeah,
But it's balancing, everybody's needs, family, relationship, work. We try to do our best. There's days where I want to be selfish and spend an extra hour on processing, but with
hmm
we just had our first child here about a year and a half ago, Braylon, and
yeah,
life's
cool.
been a different story. She's getting to that point where she's starting to talk now, but like my astronomy stuff is really tapered off. And that
Yeah.
day will come where I can really get back into it and crunch out some photos like you guys. You guys are like superstars. Every week there's a new photo. There's a couple of guys I hop on Facebook once a week. I'm like, oh yeah, we got to check Steve. All right, he's got a picture. Okay, let's check out Marcel. Oh yep,
Yeah.
3 new planetary discoveries. All right, let's
Yeah.
love those. It's great. There's so many good things out there that people are releasing. You just can't stay on top of it.
Yeah. So what else you doing? Just to get away from astronomy and astrophotography, what else do you do? You have any other hobbies that you're into?
I do, and Mark had some bragging rights with his lawn, so we'll start with you. But I'll send you a
Yeah.
photo.
Oh my
The
gosh.
whole got some lawn porn on this side too here.
It's lawn
But
wars.
it is, but I don't know. It's one of those things. You got to be a true. Once you get into a suburban and you're a dad, you got to put on your white balance or New Balance shoes and your blue jean shorts and walk out
Yeah.
there and mow and
Yeah.
look for ways to stand back with the cold beer and stare at the great thing that you just accomplished.
Just look at your grass. Look at those edges. Look at those lines. Those are good lines right there. Yeah.
And then you get bored, and it's like it's not just straight lines; it's crisscross lines, and then it's zigzag lines. I got all sorts of photos going nuts over it, but the whole lawn thing, I've taken that to the nth degree. Besides that, I used to race when I was in high school on a dirt track, so I did that for a few years, which was super cool.
Yeah.
But I had to sell everything and go to college, and they have online simulation racing now, for many years through iRacing. So I did that for quite some time, tried to get into the top ranks of racing. It's hard because you're racing against people that, build setups night in, day in and day out. So I did that for a few years, and then the child was born. So had to drop out with the racing online. I built, it's pretty cool. I took a 1978 Datsun 280Z.
Oh man, I wanted one of those so bad when I was growing up.
Yeah.
Damn.
Well,
yeah.
I bought it bone stock in Seattle, Washington, drove it all the way back to Minnesota, stripped it down to the frame, put in a LS2 Corvette motor and a 6-speed transmission, and rebuilt the rear end and shortened the CV axles and put wide tires on it. Took the suspension apart, chopped that in half, put coilover springs on it, and turned it into a race car for the road.
Wow. I'm jealous.
So, yeah, it was a lot of work, but it's like halfway done. It's not painted or anything, but it's sure a fun car. It's like running with scissors when you drive that thing, because it's like 2,500 pound car with 450 horsepower to the rear wheels. So.
Yeah, it was funny. Friday, I was talking to a guy, and he was souping up a car, and he goes, when you drive slow, it's just angry. It's just mad. It just spits and sputters. It's pissed. It wants to go fast. And I was like, really? It's mad? Yeah, it doesn't like going the speed limit. It gets angry. It makes all kind of weird noises. It wants to open up. Yeah, I was like, oh crap. Okay.
He's got to take you for a ride, and then you will understand.
No, I think I do. I think I got
it. Then you'll understand. But so it's doing that off the side, just playing around with cars and finding all sorts of projects. I drum. I have not done piano. I've never been in band, but I just drum by ear. So do a little drumming off to the side, and
cool.
Just little fun things. And now with the family, it's in all honesty, with the new child, it's like, that's my next project.
Yeah.
My little girl, it's like, I got to make her, the best human being that she can be. So
good luck. Yeah. Cause she's going to tell you that you suck one day. Just get ready for it. Yeah.
I've already gotten that from the 9-year-old.
Yeah.
Brooklyn, I'm sorry, but I love you.
Yeah. One of these days they're going to look at you like you're an idiot. And then about 10 years goes by, then they're come back and say, you know what? You were kind of, the smarter I got, the smarter you got.
Yeah, exactly. So, looking back, you were right, Dad. Yeah.
And it flies by, man. It flies. Yeah. Mine just turned 24. She's graduating college, is bartending. So you have a 24-year-old. Hello.
I was going to say, and a bartender, you're in a tough position.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, I know. Like, make me a drink, honey.
Yeah. What am I drinking? I've never heard that before, but it sure is good.
I was like, I went to her first apartment with her boyfriend because her fiance, they have an apartment. And she goes, hey, let's go see the bedroom. And I was like, no, I don't want to see it. No. And she's like, you don't want to see my bed? Nope, I don't want to see a bedroom where you and this boy are living. And then she's like, can I make you a drink? And I'm like, yeah, what do you have? She's like, well, I've got Patron, I've got vodka, I've got Jim Beam. And I was like, please don't use Daddy's little girl voice when you're describing all the alcohol in your apartment with this dude. Yeah.
And then an hour later, you were nice and loose. And you're like, you checked out the bedroom, didn't you?
Yeah. No, I still refuse to. That's a bit much. But yeah, that's what you got to look forward to, man, for sure.
Yeah, and it's never ending. Like, you can't just say, I want to return this. It's like, no, you're good for life, man.
You're in it for the long haul, for sure.
Yeah.
So don't blink. That's that song. Don't blink.
They say the first 5 years is the most important for the children. So I'm trying to make the most of it, be home as much as possible, and do what we can.
And get them out there. They're already going to be so much better off because you're going to have them out there. So you think you might be getting back and doing some photography out in the backyard again, or you think that's even a possibility where you're at?
Probably not photography. I think we're going to be down in New Mexico for the long haul. We have everything we need. We're still hands-on. We have to make a trip down there to do some maintenance, but I'm definitely going to keep the small reflector that I have just so, I've gotten the oldest one out to see Jupiter and Saturn, but going to keep them engaged and interested and point up and show them the moon, show them the stars, show them the constellations. So probably imaging in the backyard is going to be a memory of the past until something drastically changes. I hate to break your heart. I know, a lot of people say it's not imaging unless you're hauling the gear out the rig and taking everything outside every night.
Yeah.
I loved it when I did that, though, because it's like you're checking the weather constantly, like throughout the day. Is it going to be clear tonight? And if it is, like
Yeah.
you're already
Yeah.
planning, how am I going to cook supper and get everybody
Yep.
ready? And then, I'm heading out for, give me 30 minutes. I'm going to get everything set up. And then once the sun sets, it's game on.
It's game on. Oh, that's the magic hour, especially when you go out there and you look out and there's not a cloud in it, because it'll be cloudy and then there's just, and also like almost instantly all the clouds are gone, and
Yeah,
that's pretty magical.
it is. Because then you're pretty much good for a couple hours until something else changes. But down in
Yeah.
Florida, I mean, does that weather fluctuate much? I mean,
Oh, that's
can it
horrible.
trick you? I was
Yeah,
going to say.
it can. Yeah, and I have woken up to rain unexpectedly.
Really?
Oh yeah.
With your gear outside?
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
it lived?
It lived. I actually
Wow.
I woke up to I have a sprinkler system. I woke up to it going off when I thought I had shut it off. And so, and this is supposed to be about you. This is a funny story. So the end of my OTA was full of water on my little 80 millimeter. Like it had 1.5 inches of water, and the whole lens was fogged. So I put a hairdryer on it and went to work, and I'm freaking out all day long. So I get home, crystal clear skies. So I point the OTA at the sun, and kind of at the sun, and I was looking at it, and I was see this big fog starting to get smaller, and I'm like, oh, thank God, it's burning it off, right?
Yep.
So I was taking pictures of it to compare them, to really tell me that it is burning this big fog ring off that was in between the lenses. And I noticed there was an ant inside the OTA. I was like, are you kidding me? So I'm a pretty smart guy. I'm like, well, I don't want any more ants getting in here. So let me put a paper towel at the end of this thing to block ant intrusion. Mm-hmm. And so if anybody out there knows what happens when you take the sun's light and direct it through 3 lenses to a focus point,
smoke.
It catches, yeah. It caught the paper towel on fire. So then I had fire and ants inside of my OTA. Yeah. Yeah.
That's wild.
But the thing still works, and I still take great images with it. So go Mead. More power to you. Yeah.
Make
so yeah, that's
it.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, you're constantly checking the weather, but it's not horrible. So reflectors or refractors? What's your poison?
Refractors. I believe that's pretty much all we have down there. Yeah, 5-inch refractor, 6-inch refractor, and then actually the beast.
A 6-inch refractor?
Yeah.
Did you say 6-inch?
It's not installed yet. I got to do the math. It's 150 millimeters. But,
yeah, that's 6.
That one's going down there soon. A stellar view scope. And then I think we got the reducer for it too, so it should step it down. I think it's about to 900 millimeters for a focal length. So, and I really think that's the sweet spot, because I tend to look at the numbers a little too close when you look at your arc seconds per pixel for the camera you choose. Mm-hmm. But stepping it down, I can't recall. I think it's like an F ratio, like 5.5 or 6. Okay. And that one's going to be pretty, but refractors are kind of our babies, and we got a 80 millimeter stellar view down there too with a ASI 6200 on it. Oh, again, I bought that 6200 used. Same with the filters too, but it's a 9 position filter wheel. That sucker's like this big, and the camera's or the scope's like this big, so it just looks wild. Yeah, but it's really cool because you cover I think it's like 4 degrees by 2 degrees with that scope and that camera.
Oh my gosh.
And it's at about f6. So it's not super fast, but because that camera is so sensitive, it's insane what we've been able to pick up. And I have been truly just going at these interflux nebula that are out there, the dark, dusty stuff. Doing 70, 80-hour runs on some of the projects up in the sky. We'll see what we can do. But mosaics, I did an Orion mosaic when we first got down to New Mexico in 2020, doing a 2x2 mosaic with it. And doing mosaics in PixInsight is tough. The gradients are tough to get rid of. You get pinched stars along the seams, but that really sold me. I mean, I think I use Astro Pixel Processor now for mosaics. Okay. But I got, I don't know, half a dozen projects in the bucket here as far as our Astro archive goes, with the information that's just buried on hard drives that we have, terabytes after terabytes. But I really hope to kind of piece some things together at some point in time.
Yeah.
It'll be really
Well,
cool.
I'm always here to help. I can just, if you
Hey,
want.
we've shared data before. I
Yeah,
mean,
you
some of your
have.
stuff is
You
great,
shit.
so
Yeah.
I got plenty more for you. We just gotta touch base and see what you're looking to get, because
Yeah.
it's data, right? You can give it to 10,000 people, and you're going to get 10,000 different images.
Yeah, you are.
So,
You are. So speaking of the processing and that kind of thing, is there a style that you prefer? Could you even quantify that as a style? Is there this technique that you go, okay, this is how I want it. This is my base, my foundation for processing. Can you talk about that some?
so obviously everything's done in PixInsight, but for me, it kind of depends on what the project is. Sometimes I start thinking I'm going to go for as much signal to noise as I can do, raise the background level to kind of bring up the contrast between like the darker spots where there's no nebula or no dust, and really kind of show the stuff that's generally hard to see in most of the photographs that you look online. So as far as my process goes, it's the normal routine that people run. I mean, I do mirror denoise sometimes off the back.
Mm-hmm.
CMOS is kind of tricky with that, but I play around with it. And then DB generally gets run. And then you do your normal processing run with stretching and contrast and saturation, throw in a little local histogram I think it's LHE, local
Yep.
histogram equalization.
Yep. There you
And
go.
man, there's like a couple good new scripts that have come out, like Blur Exterminator.
Uh,
Everybody's talking about that.
yeah.
But
Love
if
it.
you use that right off the bat when you would do deconvolution and play around with those parameters, in
Mm-hmm.
all honesty, Adam Block and Russell Croman had a video that they released about how to tweak those parameters, and it's on
Yeah.
YouTube. And that has been a great help with that process. But there's a couple others, noise extermination, star exterminator. Those are all great tools to use that allow you to.
Are you pulling your stars when you process? Is that like a new part of your routine now?
It
That
actually
it's so
is,
easy?
yeah. It's so easy because before it was hard to do it when you were in the linear state, right? So
Yeah.
you kind of had to do it after you stretched. Well, how far you stretched depended on how bloated those stars were. Now you can do it
Yeah.
in the linear state. It makes it a lot easier to then play around with your target image, the detail, sharpening,
Mm-hmm.
contrast, levels. And then again, when you go back to interject those stars, you can still play around with the brightness on those stars as well. So the
Yeah.
whole, star reduction techniques that were used maybe a year and a half ago aren't as valuable as they used to be, because you can, screen those stars back in and choose the level that you want as far as how many stars you want in your background. So
Yeah.
it's a part of my routine almost every time. The stars will get ripped out, and I have a really bad habit as I'm acquiring data. After a couple nights and you get 50, 60 subs in HA or luminance, I get in
Mm-hmm.
PixInsight and I hammer my processor and I make that thing work. And
Yeah.
just stack some data. All right, does it look good enough? I mean, is there
Yeah.
enough signal in your red, your green, your blue? And I definitely play around with doing super luminance, where you'll take luminance, red, green, and blue, and join them all together. Take your
Mm-hmm.
four masters and make a super luminance out of that. So being in New Mexico and not having as much time to process as I used to maybe 3 years ago, I just hit the ground hard, make these scopes work, and those camera cooler fans go like mad night after night, and collect as
Yeah.
many subs as we can get, and go after that fainter stuff. So back to the original question, it depends on what target you're shooting, what your focal length is, and what
Mm-hmm.
you're looking to acquire. Are you looking for the broader scheme? Um, you can have a 80 millimeter telescope and an ASI 1600, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't mean that framing, that field of view, is what you have to process and post. You can
Yeah.
crop a smaller section, and believe it or not, you can upscale your images by 2 and use Blur Exterminator, and it's wild. I mean, I've done it with our 80 mil scope.
Yeah.
Pixel ratio is like 1.6 arc seconds per pixel, which is probably about what the seeing conditions are for the most part down in New Mexico. Arc seconds are generally between 1.5 to 3.
Wow.
But with having a scope like that, you can upsample your image so it's equivalent to like a zero point 0.8 arc seconds per pixel
Wow.
scope, and then use Blur Exterminator. You'd be surprised. I mean, do you have a TPO? That TPO
Yes,
scope? You
the
should try
180.
that. The 180. Take a
Mm-hmm.
data set you have and just scale it up by 2, and then run blur exterminator on your linear
Hmm.
image. You'd be surprised. It's pretty wild.
Yeah, I haven't
It's
tried
really
that.
good.
Yeah,
And then you get those blocky stars with telescopes like that.
yeah, yeah.
It actually will make them more round and they look better.
Oh,
Now,
really?
yeah, whether that's the true technical thing to do. I mean, astrophotography is kind of an art. It's photography, and it's technical to some extent because their photons we're actually collecting. But at the end of the day, like I said, 10,000 different people can process one master file completely different. So
Oh, yeah.
it's
Well, we are all bound by structure. We cannot escape it,
mm,
and we cannot create it, and we shouldn't diminish it. But color is personal, um, especially the darkness of the background is personal. But
yeah, you're right. You're
yeah,
absolutely right. It's all
so
personal preference.
when you take it out and you just look at the luminance, that is your foundation. Your tendrils and your cracks and crevices and those kind of things. Those are you can really screw them up,
Yeah.
which I've done in the past. But we are all bound by that. That is the signal that we're getting the different levels of gray. But how you color it, what shade of red are you pleased with, is very personal. And you could see, you really start to see people's images, and you go, oh yeah, there's so and so. If you're scrolling and you see an image, you're
You
like, oh yeah, I
recognize who
bet
it
you,
is. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, for sure. Like, I think a good example is that is it's funny because I'm going to have Trevor Jones on here at some point in time because we're 3 for 3 now. He is pretty much probably not going to be not mentioned, and yeah,
Yeah.
because he was the first guy I looked at on YouTube, and I went, "What did he just say? I don't, huh? What?" So, but you always can tell his images. There's a certain. I think he should patent that color red because it's not quite a blue red. It's not a true red, but you really notice, especially early on, all his images had that same
Yeah.
hue of
You,
red.
you can
Right?
tell.
You know what I'm
I
saying?
completely understand what you're saying. If you had a lineup of 4 images, which one's Trevor's? That
Yeah,
one. You'd be
that
able to
one.
point it out. Yeah.
Yeah,
But it's a common theme. I mean, if you can spot out a picture that Trevor did without actually his name inscripted on the bottom, that's pretty impressive. He's got such
yeah.
a strong following, and I think
Hmm.
you'll get him on at some point in time.
Well, I mean, and yeah, that I was like, okay, this is what this guy's doing, and you could relate to him. There wasn't a lot of he didn't have a lot of call to action at the beginning of his videos, and I don't think he does. And I took that to heart. Like, having a YouTube channel, I very rarely say like and subscribe. I mean, by now, if you don't know to like and subscribe, then you've been under a rock, and you're probably not watching my channel
Yeah,
anyway,
exactly.
right?
All the kids
Yeah.
know it nowadays too.
Yeah, all those kids. Yeah.
Yeah.
So speaking of social media, what's a social media pet peeve? Something that you see people do in this hobby to represent this hobby on social media that you roll your eyes at? Is there anything out there?
Man, I really don't have anything because I appreciate what everybody does because the community's like grown like it I feel like tenfold in the last 3 to 4 years.
Hmm.
If there is a pet peeve I have, and it's really simple, is like when it comes to like liking and commenting on astrophotos that you see, the
Yeah.
community is way too nice. I'll just leave it at that. Like
Wow.
there's
Wow.
some
No, no,
there's
no, 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 no. You're not leaving it at that.
yeah, I mean,
Expand. Expand.
there's some average photos out there. You see people that are really just, saying, this is fantastic, the best I've ever seen. But again, I don't know if that's somebody that's in the field doing astronomy or if that's just somebody that's scrolling and seeing an image and saying, I like
Yeah.
that, without any
Yeah.
background. But this community is like so nice. I mean, if you look at every other forum, every other group, it's like troll after troll after troll
Yeah.
after troll.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're just too nice. I mean, it's
Yeah.
actually a good thing.
Yeah.
But that's really my only pet peeve. The only other pet peeve I have is there's just too much crap to look at. By the time I get on to like scroll and look, I see maybe 5% of what it is. So
Yeah.
if I do any social media, I just go to Astrobin. I look at what's recently being
Mm.
posted. Especially when I'm looking for targets myself, I'll look at what's posted on Astrobin because you obviously
Hmm.
can click full resolution, zoom in, pixel peep, look at what people are doing,
yeah,
subscribe for the people you like or bookmark the images. But then I open up Stellarium and I look at where it's at in the sky and whether or not I can image it. So
yeah,
that's
yeah,
like my
true.
go-to social media site, you could say. But
Have you found, I don't know if we talked about this, the DSS survey, sky surveys in Stellarium? Have you used those?
the sky surveys in Stellarium?
Yeah. So
No, I have not.
if you, dude, it's amazing. So if you go into Stellarium, there is a window, Explorer window,
Okay.
and then all the way over at the right hand side, there is a tab called Sky Surveys. So you click that, and it'll take a bit to download, and it'll download Hubble surveys, Gaia
Wow.
surveys, Spitzer surveys. Scroll down to DSS and choose red, and it will light the sky up with every bit of nebulosity that's out there, every bit of faint
I'll
dust.
have to do that.
Oh, it's amazing.
I'm sure it's similar to Aladdin Light. It's a little
Yeah.
program I have on my PC too, and you can select whatever sky survey you want to look at. But if it's in
Okay.
Stellarium, I use that constantly because you can set your GPS location or your
Oh,
coordinates
okay.
and time in Stellarium to kind of see where those targets are in the sky. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
but
Yeah. I think I had that in my how to find deep sky target. I think it was in one of my videos because somebody showed that to me, and what that does is it shows you, all the sharpless targets that Stellarium won't show you in the regular when it pops open when you first download it. It
Yep.
shows you all that stuff in great detail. So
That's going to be done tonight.
there's a colored DSS colored, and it's okay, but I like red because it's almost red is like it's like Stellarium with HA. It just shows you everything, all the HA signal out there, any of it, all of it.
And that's a great place to start because there's so many targets out there that are not well known, that are hidden in between, popular targets. But if you can turn on the fainter stuff or every piece of nebula that's stretched out that you may not see in Stellarium or on Astrobin, that would be the place to do it in Stellarium. I think everybody has Stellarium. At least I assume.
Yeah, they should. Yeah, you should. If you don't, get it. So what's your favorite? Is it LRGB, HARGB, or narrowband?
It's tough between broadband and narrowband. I would say narrowband because with broadband the gradients can get kind of tough, especially when you're going after the dusty stuff. But I would say broadband because it's truer color, and narrowband's a little trickier to do unless you have your RGB stars to add in. But the playing field with narrowband is so great. I mean, you can change and color mask and saturate to the beat hell and, really tweak it to the way you like. With, broadband, it's a little different. Do I really have to pick one?
Yeah, you do.
I would say I'd say broadband just because we're in some dark skies, and I've been able to shoot some stuff I probably wouldn't have been up here. So
definitely.
Broadband's pretty fun.
I see targets on Stellarium and here in the Bortle 7 skies that I'm in. I just like Iris Nebula. I've shot it before. I'll never.
Same here.
Here in my backyard, I will never get that brown.
The brown dust.
Faint dust. Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
It's tough. I did it in my backyard too. And what's your Bortle scale down there? Are you like 5 or 6?
6 and 7. I'm like 6 to the north and 7 to the south.
Yeah, you have to shoot 100 hours to get the brown stuff.
Yeah.
Maybe not with your F4 scope, but
I don't even know. I and I think that is a challenge for me this year because that's going to be one of my last few questions here but for me it's like, can I really put 100 hours on a target? Can I really stay disciplined and do that? I've never done it. I've gone 60. It's my most.
That's still a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot. And I didn't really see, and honestly, between 40 and 60, I just had more light pollution to deal with. I really felt like once I hit that 40 hours, everything else was really just a horrible gradients to deal with. So I don't know if it's really worth it. I don't know.
You just got to try it to really know. I mean, the stars are not going anywhere. I mean, you could put 100 hours into something, bank 100 hours and see what you get. But
so what's the most you've ever done on one target?
I think I have a few that are high up in there. I did one, it's not complete, but I have like a 2-panel mosaic on the Heart Nebula. And I know we're shooting at about F6, so the time that you spend on a target is going to be different than somebody at F4. But
Yeah.
I think we shot. It's probably about. I got to do the math here for each filter. About 70 to 80 hours.
Oh
So
my
70,
gosh.
80 hours times 6. You can do the math. It's
Jeez.
a shitload.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
what I
That's
was trying,
technical terms.
yeah, technical, yeah, different than a buttload. It's a
Yeah.
shitload.
It's a shitload. Yeah.
But yeah, we got a lot on that one, and I went 20-minute exposures. And again,
Oh,
I
wow.
think our filters are 3 nanometers, so they're pretty narrow. So obviously we need a
Yeah.
little bit more signal, but I wanted to do something that was a little deep, and believe it or not, there was a newer planetary nebula that was discovered to the right-hand side of the Heart Nebula,
Oh,
and
wow.
Marcel had posted that I think a couple years ago, and gosh, I messaged him like, hey, I just looked at my data because you guys posted you found that, and I said it's right here. I see exactly where they found it.
Yeah.
So it's pretty wild. But the other target that I'm doing, there's 2 targets I've done quite a bit on. The IFN, the integrated flux nebula around M81 and M82. I've
Yeah.
done about 2 degrees around M81 and M82, and every time that target kind of comes up for the last 2 years, I've added like another panel around it. And I think I've
Okay.
gotten, several degrees around there. There's so much of that IFN around there that I
Yeah.
had never seen before.
Oh,
And the
wow.
great thing is with Star Exterminator, seriously, when you remove those stars and it leaves the galaxies in, you wouldn't
Yeah.
believe the amount of galaxies that are 10 to 50 million light years beyond what you're actually
Yeah.
staring at in that IFN. But the reason why I'm so into that is the IFN, you wouldn't be able to see it if it wasn't for the brightness of the Milky Way. So the way I describe it to people is the IFN isn't illuminated by itself. It's actually just reflected light from the galaxy. Best way to describe it is if you're sitting at a campfire
Hmm.
and the campfire is glowing and you look behind you and you see your shadows cast on the trees. It's the
Yeah.
opposite of that you see the light from the campfire spread over the trees. That's what it's doing to the
Okay.
dust that's behind us in the Milky Way
That's crazy.
galaxy. So it's just
Crazy.
wild to think about that. It's just
Yeah.
it just I'm just in awe in the dust stuff. So, and then there's dust around the Polaris region too, and I've been stuffing like I don't know 50 to 70 hours per panel on that too, and I'm gonna do probably 4 degrees out from Polaris around that whole area.
Is that with an equatorial mount, is that as much as is that as far off as you can go? Or
Yeah,
how does that work?
it's with an equatorial mount, and I just have Polaris like in the bottom corner one. And
Okay.
throughout the year, you got to wait for, well, you only can do half the sky every night, roughly. But
Yeah.
throughout the whole year, because it's at about 32 degrees for us, you just shoot constantly. I mean, it doesn't move. But
Yeah.
because the telescope isn't aligned perfectly, the centering of the frame isn't exactly perfect. But
Hmm.
you just piece it together 1/4 of a year at a time. That one
Wow.
I just started, so we're just getting into it.
What's the lowest target you guys have worked on?
This one right here. That's
That
the Vela supernova remnant.
oh, okay.
So for me, I was like, well, everybody says don't shoot below 30 degrees. And I'm
Yeah.
thinking, well, I got time. I'm going to give it a shot. So that one down there is about, it fluctuates between 9 degrees and I think 12 degrees above the horizon. So it's super low.
Yeah,
You're
that is
staring, I think you're staring through like 3 atmosphere thicknesses, 3 to 4 atmosphere thicknesses. Maybe
yeah.
it's more. I can't
Easy.
recall. But,
Yeah.
the full width half maximum coming off those subs was pretty crappy. But it's
Yeah.
hard to see. But I mean, there's plenty of oxygen and hydrogen alpha where it'll pull out. And this was prior to the Blur Exterminator days when I did that one. But
Yeah.
with proper deconvolution, you can drop that full width half maximum. It was at about like 3.5.
Oh,
We were
wow.
able to drop it down to like 2.5, so it wasn't too bad.
Hmm.
But yeah, it's the lowest
Yeah.
I've gone. I was pretty surprised too, because you're at the mercy of the clouds that are hundreds of miles to the south of you.
Yeah.
How about you? How low have you gone?
Skull and Crossbones. I did that one pretty successfully.
That one turned out beautiful.
Thank you. The prawn. I got some subs on it, but I did shoot the lobster. No, the lobster. And what's the other one? The cat's paw.
Cat's paw. Yeah,
Yeah.
we've given that one a shot too, and that's still
Yeah.
pretty low even for you in Florida.
I can technically shoot the dueling dragons if there was a tree not in the way. but I'm at an elevation that I can do that.
I attempted that one too, but never got enough
Yeah,
time with it because it's like
really.
9 degrees above the horizon for like
Yeah.
1 hour,
Yeah.
That's all
Yeah.
you get.
Yeah. I just wanted to try it, but yeah. So you're at this point where you're remote imaging and you're doing a lot of stuff. What's your goals for 2023? A target? I know you guys are working on some mosaic, or is there something out there you haven't shot or you shot and you just don't feel like you've done it justice? And what's a goal out there for you?
There's a lot we haven't done. There's so many targets we've shot and we haven't processed the data.
Yeah.
A goal for myself at some point in time would be to upgrade one of our refractors from, the F6 range. I'd love to get something that happens to be 2 to 300 millimeters wide that has an F ratio of 3 to 4. But the
Oh
dark
wow.
skies down there, I mean, you could really suck in the photons and
Yeah.
utilize your time wisely and then turn, a 100-hour project with an F6 scope into like a 400-hour project
Oh my
with the
gosh.
bigger scopes. So,
Yeah.
what I want to do at some point in time is possibly discover a planetary nebula. And I know that's relatively hard to do, but there was a certain point in time, I think it was in 2020, I imaged like a 4 degree by 2 degree section of the Eagle Nebula with the Omega Nebula. And
Mm-hmm.
I had maybe about 100 hours of HA and 60 hours of oxygen into it. And at that point in time, we're just getting down in New Mexico. I was still understanding and learning processing and astrophotography techniques. And I stacked the data, extracted the stars, and I kind of knew what I was looking at. You're looking at filaments and structures and stuff. And there was
Mm-hmm.
two blue and red areas that were kind of sticking out to me that were relatively small, tucked away in some little nook and cranny.
Hmm.
And I was like, that to me looks like it's, I thought, a planetary nebula. But I didn't
Yeah.
know at that point in time that obviously you can uh, list your planetary nebula finding with, I think there's some site you can publish in Hong Kong or something.
Hmm.
And you give them your coordinates and data and stuff like that. So I didn't think anything of it. I just played around with the data and moved on. Well,
Yeah.
then it was, let's see, about a year later, I processed that data again and looked at it. I'm like, that's got to be something. So I looked up how to submit the data, and I'd have to draw it up again. But I took a screenshot of it. I found the star that was in the center of it. It looked like a blue star that'd be relatively hot, and
Mm-hmm.
gave the coordinates for it and submitted it. And I was like, yeah, I think this is a planetary nebula. And they came back and said, oh, yeah, this was researched and discovered. It was like a month after I initially found it, a year prior to.
Oh
And that
man.
was by Marcel and his group, who do
Yeah.
phenomenal work. But I was like,
Yeah.
man, it was so close. So I'm biting at the bit at some point in time to find something.
Yeah.
And we don't have the equipment to really survey the skies, but he's got a technique that allows him to really dig into those deep sky surveys and look for filaments and structures. And I want to
Hmm.
say they've probably found all the needles in the haystack in the southern
You never know.
hemisphere. But
Yeah.
there's going to be something out there, and we're just going to keep looking.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
Well, I super appreciate your time tonight. This has been I've actually learned some things, I've learned some things, and
I
I
do
learned how
every
to
time
pronounce
too.
your last name.
That's the least of your worries.
That's the most important.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I had a really good time, and definitely want to have you back on.
I appreciate it so
And
much, Steve.
yeah,
It was a blast
especially
talking
like,
to you.
later on down the road when you actually do that planetary nebula, I'm going to have you on, and then you can gloat and run
Yeah.
around, and we'll just sit here and watch you.
I would
You
love
know,
to have some photos of at least the IFN stuff that we're doing and some of the mosaics to post at some point in time. But we'll
yeah,
get there. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint for us. Stars
yeah.
aren't going anywhere, and maybe we'll get on social media at some point in time, like you guys do. You big
So
wigs.
are you on Instagram at all?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram right now. It's just through my personal account, Stock Car Mafia.
Okay,
That's
Stock
kind of
Car Mafia. I
acronym
remember
for,
that. I was like, Mafia?
yeah.
Who am I talking to? This guy sounds
Yeah,
dangerous.
but we will get something going with Dave and myself. We're kind of a partnership. We call
Yeah,
ourselves WD Astro, and
cool.
we'll have a website at some point in time and start posting. We're not in it to post to get likes and follows and make money and all this stuff. We're in it just to do it for ourselves and be awestruck in what we can find and print and share with family and friends. So.
That's awesome, dude.
But I appreciate your time, Steve. It was
Yeah, man.
fantastic talking with you,
That
and
was
I hope to
awesome.
catch up with you again in the future.
All right, dude. Take
All
care.
right, take care.
See ya.